Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're making a guide to the first encounter in Sundered Doctrine. I know this is a little bit late, the dungeon's been out for a while, but I wanted to kind of go over this because there were some people that said that this would be very helpful to them and they thought that this could be useful. So this is not going to really be an explanation of how to do the encounter in basics. I'm going to assume you already know how to do that. If you don't, I do have another video on the channel that kind of goes over the basics. This is going to be over more of the theory and showing you every single path that the lenses can take, both the optimal path as well as a backup path in case you need to go a different route, and also explain kind of why you would need to do that, as well as the final round, the third round, and kind of explain not necessarily the optimal paths, but basically explain kind of how you figure out which lenses here in the center you want to use and in what order, because that actually does matter in the third round because of the way that the paths kind of go and the only certain options that you have to use these lenses to get to certain rooms. Now, before we start, just so we're all on the same page, all of my callouts are from the raid flag's perspective. So these room callouts for me, I'm going to call this one close right. We're going to call this one far right. And then we got far left and close left. Again, just so we're all on the same page before we begin. Now, in terms of optimal paths, if you are needing to get your lens to either the far right or the far left room, that's always going to be wanting to be done from the middle when possible. So you're going to use this middle lens, you're going to turn it so that it is basically using this red line that heads straight towards the far side of the room. And once it is in this lens right here, you just turn this the direction you need, so it'll either point directly through that kind of gated area to go to the far left, or that little gated area to go to the far right. And then once you're actually getting that lens into either room, very simple, you're just going to need to place a lens and turn the little lens holder that is going to be directly in front of each wheel. So this one right here, you would just turn so that it is pointed at this wheel right here. And again, obviously you need a lens in the actual holder to be able to do this, but that'll go directly into the wheel, and that will give you the far right room. And then we're going to run across to the far left room, again, doing the same exact thing, making sure that the middle holder right there is pointed to the left this time, and it'll go directly to the lens holder that is in front of the far left wheel over here. And again, you would do the same thing where you make sure that you turn this towards the wheel, and again, have a lens in there, and that'll be the far left optimal path. Now for the close left room, again, you're going to be able to do this in two. You're going to use the left light in the middle here, and that light will be able to point directly to this little holder right here. Now this one is actually a little bit tricky in terms of just kind of knowing where it goes, but you want it pointed directly through this gate here. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to bounce off of that permanent lens that will then point or bounce to this second holder right here, and you'll be able to turn this one to point to that permanent lens, which will go directly into the bottom left or close left wheel. So again, you only need two. This one right here is really important. You're never going to really need to use this one for the optimal path, but for this one, you'll just need this second holder or second lens holder in the hallway here. Now, also do note that for this close left room, you will never, ever, 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 ever need to use the holder that's in here. You'll never need to use this one. Always, 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 you'll be able to use this one here and be able to kind of just finish it off from there. Now for the close right room, this is the only one that is going to require 3 total lenses or 3 total kind of bounces in order to get it into the wheel. For this one, you're going to want to use the right lens starting plate, or the right starting lens first, again, assuming you can use the optimal strategy here. And from there, it's going to want to point directly to this lens here. Now, this one actually has 2 options. You can either, that just threw me off, that was kind of interesting. You can either point it to the wall, to that one right there, which is actually what I usually do, or you can point it to this one right here. And it's actually going to be able to do the exact same thing no matter which one you do. If you point it to this one right here, you're going to want to have it turned so that it goes directly to the one inside there. Or if you point it to the wall one, again, you'll need to have this go to the left so that it goes through the wall here and kind of through the gate there. And again, either way, it's going to then end up in the same spot, which will be this one right here. And again, once you have this one, this will be the third one that will need to be pointed directly into the wall, and you'll be done for the bottom right room. Now let's go over the kind of secondary paths for each of these rooms. Now again, why would you need to use these secondary paths? Let's just give a very easy example. Is let's say you need to do both far left and far right in the same round, right? You obviously cannot use middle twice. Like, so if you have the middle one set up in its optimal way that I just showed you and it's going to the far left, then you have no way of getting to the far right room with that same lens. You would need a different way to be able to do it. So that's why we're going to go over, again, the not as optimal, but other ways to do each of these rooms. Now for the backup way of getting to the far right room, you're going to be able to use the right lens here, and this one would need to be pointed directly to this one right here. Once the lens is in here, it's actually going to need, I think it's actually pointed there. It's a little harder to tell when the lenses aren't in here. It's not that way. I believe it was already in the right spot. But I can't tell between these two. No, I think it's actually this one. Again, once you have like a lens in here and you have the light pointing, it'll make it a lot more obvious. But you want to make sure that the light is pointing directly into this little permanent lens between that gate there, and then it'll bounce directly to this one right here. And then again, you can kind of do the same thing as last time. Have this one point to the one that's right in front of the wheel. And again, this one's already pointed in the right spot because we did that earlier, and then it'll be able to go directly into the wheel. So do note, actually, a very important tip, as you'll see as I go over all these quote backup ways, is the ending wheel, or I'm sorry, the ending lens that you use will always be the same whether you use the optimal path or the backup path, right? So like this one, you just have this extra one here, and again, to get to that one's a little bit different than the optimal path, but you're still using this one as the final lens holder. And you'll notice that that's going to be the same for all 4 of these rooms. The final one is always going to be the same. Now for the backup far left path, you're going to use the left light here, and this is going to go directly to the holder right kind of in front of it, kind of similarly to the right side. Actually, it's very similar to the far right side backup path, and you're going to do the exact kind of same idea as that other side. You're going to point it directly through the kind of gate over here, which will hit this permanent lens right there. And then that's going to bounce into this one right here. Again, this is basically a mirrored image of the far right side. Make sure that this is then bounced and pointed towards this holder, and then this holder will go directly into the wheel. Again, remember, I'm just going to keep repeating it because I think this is a very important and useful tip and thing and to like really understand and kind of click for you, is that the final holder is always the same whether we use the optimal path or this backup path. Now the backup path for close left is going to use the middle light, or the middle lens here, and that's going to need to point directly to the left here for this little holder right here. And then you're going to turn this one a couple times. Again, depends on where it starts. You might not turn it the same amount of times. It might already be correct, but you want it to be pointed directly at that holder, the first one in this hallway. And then this first one in the hallway can then get turned to be pointed to the second one in the hallway, which again, just repeating it again, this is the final one that we use for the optimal path, and it's also the final one we use for the backup path that will be pointed into the, again, just reminding you, pointed into the little permanent one there, that will go straight into the wheel. Technically, it actually goes to that one and then into the wheel, but again, same idea as the all the other rooms. You're still getting to the same final lens, is doing it in a different way. And then our final backup path for the close right room is actually going to be using the left side lens, and this will point directly across to the same first spot as the actual optimal path. And this is, so technically this is the same optimalness, I guess, would be, you could argue, because it's the same, you're still using one, just turning one of the lenses from the middle to this spot, and then it's exactly the same from here. You can either use that one or that one, which will then point into that one there, which again, just going over the whole thing, will point into the wheel. So technically you could do either side optimally. Now again, the thing with the optimal path here and the right side in general is the right side lens, this right side starting lens, can only go to the 2 right rooms, which we're going to go over here in a second in terms of the third round especially. So you wouldn't really want to use the left side very often. Again, there is a technicality there, which we'll explain in a second, but usually you want to use the right side to get to the right side because it's the only time you're going to be able to use it. Now for the third round, I've made a bit of a flow chart here, and again, this may look a little overwhelming, but we'll go over each step here really fast. So the first round, or the first lens of the third round, is shown up at the top here, and pretty simple. If it is a right side room, so you need to either go to the far right or the close right for that first round, that first bat tells you that, you're going to use the right side lens, no matter what. Do that, you're chilling. If it is the left side first, again, either far left or close left, you can use the optimal path for that first one. So again, if it was far left, you would use middle. If it was close left, you would use left. Technically, you don't even have to do it that way. You could use you could do the opposite, and it would still work out fine. But why make it less optimal than it has to be? Now for the second and third lens combo here, the only like guaranteed way to do this successfully the first time without having to like redo any lights or potentially kind of have to redo things is to actually figure out the final answer before you begin putting in the second and the third lenses. So the easiest way to do this, I have this written out here, is basically kill the second bat, do the encounter as you normally would. That'll tell you what the second room is going to be. And then from there, look at the other two rooms, right? You're going to have one room that's already pointed to. Like let's say, for example, the far left was the first room. Doesn't even matter what it was. And then the bat is telling you that the second room is going to be the close left, right? Again, whatever's on that wall. That means you know that the third one is going to be on the right side, right? Now you can also know, if you actually go into the rooms, that, there's symbols, obviously, on the top middle. Again, we're assuming experience with the basics of the encounter. And all you really need to be able to do with that is, even if you don't know the lore, to be able to know the answer and all of that when it comes to what is actually going on in this main wheel in the center here, all you need to do is, out of the two remaining rooms, the one you didn't use first and the one that the bat's not telling you second, figure out which of those two remaining rooms is either person or a thing. Which, for example, is like Traveler, Guardian, Witness. There's other options, but I wrote these down as options, right? Because there's always going to be two rooms that are, again, quote, person or things, and there's going to be two rooms that are, quote, the verbs, which I know some people kind of know this strategy in terms of just being able to find the answer before you even begin, which you can do that's totally fine. I feel like that's just a little bit extra and a little bit more to think about if you try to, like, figure out the exact order before you even kill any bats. So I'm not really worry too much about that, but just figure out the other person or thing in the two remaining rooms. That'll tell you, what the final room will be. Now, once you have the order, the full order with whichever one was the first room, whichever room was the second room, whichever room was the third room, that's when you're going to use this kind of flow chart right here. Now, again, if the first room was on right, and then the second room was on right, obviously the third room has to be left. So that's kind of what this first example is showing. And again, in this example, we use the right side first, because that's the flowchart. And so then for the second right room, you would either have to use middle or left, right? Now the way you want to do that is you want to use whatever lens can get there, right? So basically what that means is if that second right room was the far right, you would use middle, and if it was the close right, you would use left. Again, using the examples that we gave for the quote backup path for the left side, and then again, close right, middle can't actually get over there. So you would want to use the left side there. Now, if it is, again, the right side first, then left, then right, in terms of, again, the room order, you're going to do a very similar strategy to the first one, but you want to pay attention to whatever the final right room is and save that. So again, it's kind of like what we just did, but in reverse. So again, obviously the right side was used for the first round, then whatever you used for, or whatever you're going to use for left side is based on the right side, right? So like if, let's say that we knew that final right side room was far right, we want to save middle for that. We want to save middle for that, again, because we can do the easy boom and then boom strat. So we would, whichever the left side room was, we would use left. Now, if it was close right for the final right side room, we would use middle to go left for whatever that left one was, and then we would save left to go close right again. It's the exact same idea as this one, except we just have to know it ahead of time and kind of think a little like one step ahead. Now, for the final two options, these are honestly probably the easier options. Or honestly, none of these are too crazy, but these are kind of relatively simple. For, again, the left, left, right, you get left and then left again, and then final one is right. All you're going to need to do is use whatever you didn't use first out of left and middle, and then right. So this is where, again, like even if you didn't do the quote optimal one, it wouldn't matter. So like if far left was first, you would probably, hopefully, have used middle, and then for close left, you could use left and have them both optimal. But you could easily do it backwards, where if it was far left and you used left, you could do, again, the one that's there and get there, and again, middle could then do the backup path here and there, and then again, you'd have right for the right side room. So either way, it doesn't matter for that one. Again, just making sure that you're using left and middle, and then right. Very simple as well, as pretty much the exact same thing. For left, right, left, again, left, whichever was the first left room, you used either left or middle to get there. Doesn't really matter which one you did. Then the right room, you'll use the right side lens. And then for whatever room is left on left, or remaining on left, you'll use the remaining lens from left or middle. So again, if you do it the optimal way, which there's no reason not to, if it was far left first, you would have used middle, then whichever right side room you used right, and then close left, you would use left, for example. Or in reverse, if it was close left first, you would use left, then again, right goes right, and then middle goes to far left. Now, I purposely left these final two for the very end and kind of separately, just because, well, one is very easy, and the other one is kind of going to be the best example of why this matters. Again, it technically matters in a couple other ways as well, but let's go over the final two options, right? And so the first one is if it was right first, and then the final two are left in either order, doesn't matter. And again, this literally does not matter what you do, basically. Other than, again, if it's right side first, make sure you use this right lens, and then no matter whether it's close left and then far left, or far left and then close left, doesn't matter if you use middle then the left, or left then middle, doesn't matter, you'll be able to get to either room very easily, again, using either the optimal paths, which I would recommend, or the backup paths. Now, for this final example, I put a question mark because we're just going to kind of go over this in full and explain, again, and show why this matters. And this is if it is left side first, and then right again. Now, what's going to happen, obviously, again, left side, you do whichever one. Again, I would recommend doing the optimal for that room, just because it's a little bit easier. Less lenses, it's chill. Now, once you have done that, you need to be paying attention to the right side, right? That's going to be, now again, we figured out the answer. We know that the second and the third rooms are going to be going right. Now, your first maybe thought, and my first thought when I was kind of, I guess, like, quote unquote studying this encounter, is like, oh, well, you would just use the right side lens first, you know, make sure we get that out of the way, and then we're good, right? Now, not exactly, because what's going to happen here, right? Let's just say the first room was far left and you used the middle lens to do that, right? You use the optimal way. Now, if the second room on right, or the second room total was bottom right, let's say, or close right, just to kind of keep it the same callouts, and you use this right side lens, and then again, we know just based on testing this ahead of time that the third room is going to be far right. Or let's say we don't know, and we used that right, and all we have left is the left side lens, and we need to get to this far right room. Now the problem is we can't do that. This lens does not get over to the far right room. So what's going to be the issue there is then you would have to basically, break down the one you just did, redo it, and use left side first and then right. Now again, is that like a super issue? I guess not really, especially not like the contest and the timer's gone. But again, we're teaching the theory here. If you've made it this far in the video, you care more than most people probably about how the actual theory of how these encounters work, rather than just like just do this, right? So we're explaining kind of why that matters, right? So this is why that matters, because you can get into that situation where that final lens that you have cannot get to the room that you need it to, right? So in that case, again, if it was left, right, right, and let's say that the far left was used, so the middle was used here to get to far left, then knowing ahead of time that it is right, and knowing the order of right and right is really important, because in that case, if it was far right, again, we cannot get there with left, so I mean that would, I guess, be pretty easy, because we wouldn't use left because we can't get there, so we would use right, use the right lens to get to far right, and then we'd have the left lens remaining to get to close right. Now, again, same exact thing, but if it was in reverse, which we kind of just explained, if it was close right first, again, left lens can get there, and we know that far right is afterwards, so we want to make sure that we use close left, or I'm sorry, we want to make sure that we use the left lens to get to close right, and then save the right for far right. Now, even within that, we can't, like, let's just say we didn't think one step ahead, right? If we didn't think one step ahead and we use left to get to close right, because we're kind of half thinking one step ahead, we're like, oh yeah, like maybe we'll save right for the far right. But if we didn't know it was far right, and let's say the final one was instead close left, and we already used left, and all we have left is the right side lens can't get to close left. So basically what I'm kind of explaining there is that step, that second to third lens step that I have written out here. If you don't know it ahead of time, there is absolutely no way to be absolutely sure that you are using the correct lens, and you may need to reset it. You absolutely, you have to figure out the final answer and the order of these three. Again, just, you don't necessarily need to know the exact left, right, like, far left, close left, right. Like, you just need to know right, 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 or right, right, left, or left, left, right. And then within that, kind of know potentially the specifics in these examples that I'm giving. But if you don't do that, again, that example just shows that there's no way to just be like, always do this. Like, you have to actually have the theory in your head and kind of think about it a step ahead to be able to be 100% consistent with that mechanic. Now, if you made it this far in the video, you're a trooper and you like raids as much as I do, raids and dungeons as much as I do, and I appreciate that very much. If you didn't, then you're not hearing this, but still appreciate you. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful, and as always, have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.